Well, welcome. Thank y'all for coming out. We're going to have a conversation around the Office of the CIO and really about the partnership between IT and the business. And something that most people can relate to is the fact that typically in companies, not always the best relationship between IT and the business, IT and finance. And so we're going to dive into that just a little bit today. And then we're going to talk about how the platform, Anaplan's platform, really lends itself to solving this challenge and how it can play a key role moving forward. So just a quick note of background, just so you have an idea who's talking with you. My career started around Accenture, spent roughly 9 years, then spent the next 25 years with Shell, multiple roles where I had CIO responsibilities, and then from there went over to Anaplan, and I had the opportunity to be an executive sponsor for Anaplan at Shell for roughly 3 to 4 years with a lot of implementations and experience around that. So we were actually able to implement at scale at Shell. So without further ado, let's move forward here. And what you're going to get is a little piece of a CIO maturity framework here that's going to serve as a bit of a backdrop for this relationship between IT and the business. And so I'm going to click through this very quickly. And what I'd like you just to kind of take into account, and one of the challenges that we often have is that the IT organization can be misunderstood by the business and also the other way around. And so what I want to highlight for you is really from an IT perspective, the first thing on people's mind is really around secure, reliable operations. And the business sometimes doesn't always remember that that's actually the first priority from an IT perspective. And we have a lot of booths and discussions around data and security in this conference, and it just speaks to the priority that that has in the IT function. And it's also very important for the business. The beauty of the platform is that it does lend itself to being, first, very reliable from an operational perspective. It's also very scalable in its architecture, and it also enables you to rationalize the portfolio. I'll give you some specifics around that here in a moment. The next piece, and this really gets back to the IT-business relationship, and that's really the backdrop for this discussion. And that relationship, once we start to make a bit of progress where the two sides are actually working together and going after some of the same objectives, the opportunity to actually generate value, solve problems, and so forth can actually become a reality. The platform lends itself to an agile delivery approach. And the other piece is that the delivery and the implementations and projects typically take 3 months or less. And so I've had numerous opportunities and experiences in my previous role where that was clearly the case, and is proving to be the case actually over the last year or so. So being able to deliver value at pace is a very key ingredient. And then finally, when we start linking these solutions together, that's where the opportunity to be able to transform not just a business process, but the business itself. And so where does Anaplan really come into play here, and how does this fit? The platform allows you to be able to move data, bring it into a place where then you can actually have access to it from a multi-user perspective. There's an additional layer here that also allows for a lot of complex calculations and capabilities. So let's move forward here in our story, and this is a picture of what a lot of companies are dealing with and a lot of our customers are dealing with. And so let's just move through this from an IT perspective and a business value lens. And so if we look at this on the far left side, the world we're typically dealing with is a disparate world, a world full of spreadsheets, ad hoc databases, things that are working off the desktop, and the ability to actually move these into a data hub, a common framework, is something that would really benefit these business processes. So an example of this would revolve around, let's take a supply chain type process or opportunity where you're having to solve for supply planning on the front side, but also demand planning and when you're going to have to actually take advantage of using those supplies, and then how do you optimize around that. So this actually enables you to bring that data together and then do the forecasting, to be able to do the analytics, and even do predictive type work to then be able to unlock that and optimize those types of solutions. And so you can think of that almost in the first piece of this. But where it starts to get more interesting is then when you start pulling these pieces together and performing those analytics and business processes and so forth, and the platform actually has workflow capability baked into it, along with an in-memory modeling engine that's proprietary. It's called Hyperblock. When you start to put these pieces together, now you're actually able to generate a set of insights, and that can then turn into a set of actions that you can actually move forward with. So let's take that supply chain example and then move it forward. The key here is now, if you continue to leverage the platform, you can now have that feed your finance portfolio appraisal type processes, forecasting cash flows, forecasting cash management, forecasting revenues, and so forth. So now, by virtue of being able to connect these pieces together, you are now creating a line of sight. So if you think about where you're working on processes and trying to take decisions and actions on your supply chain, being able to have a set of insights that will actually let you see all the way out to where you're forecasting revenues and so forth, now you're actually able to make a different kind of decision making than what you had before. Now you can actually see what is the actual trade-off, and you can look at an overarching portfolio of where you're working through those pieces. So that's a capability, and that line of sight is something that is very valuable. And often these data sets revolve around different departments and processes and are often stranded or siloed from each other. So then you're actually now available, you're capable of bringing these into this data hub and then now executing on that set of data and performing those calculations and doing the forecasting and the modeling. So then, if you're able to put those pieces together, now you actually have an opportunity to transform the business. So in the final piece of this, where we look at kind of what are some of those commercial objectives, the idea of being able to do things at speed, the idea of being able to simplify, and then ultimately being able to do it at scale is what's key to then not only solving for a departmental challenge or even a business unit challenge, but now you're unlocking and solving for an enterprise challenge. So bring things back to the IT and business relationship. I'm going to highlight Sienna as a current customer who's on this journey today. And what they have done is they've started implementing on the front side of this honeycomb. And so this honeycomb starts to represent some of the use cases and opportunities that Anaplan is very well positioned to solve for. And in fact, even Gartner has highlighted Anaplan as a leader kind of in everything from sales performance management to the supply chain space, and also in the FP&A space or XP&A space as well. So you can now see how solving these different process areas, and then the platform allows you to connect. And this is specifically where Sienna is today, and then now they've laid out the roadmap and how they're going to move forward. So the piece I'd like to leave you with is that the platform, the way it's set up, allows for the IT organization to be able to manage the technical elements, the guardrails, and then it can be business empowered in the sense that now the business is actually able to actually execute and deliver on some of the simple modeling capabilities. The interface itself is more of an Excel-like interface of which the business community and users are typically familiar with, and then you can then take that along with some simple modeling, and now you have a business community that's able to move forward with these solutions and advance them, and at the same time, the IT community can have the guardrails. And so the guardrails can be everything from how do you want to ultimately manage the data, how do you want to then deal with things like security and controls, and then ultimately you have to be able to audit these processes such that they're actually being executed the way they were designed and laid out. Anaplan provides you full-blown audit capability anytime anything is changed, updated, and so forth. So now you actually have the ability to prove out and have evidence that the very processes and things you're solving for are actually truly happening, and that would be an audit requirement capability that you would have. So that's an additional piece that goes with this and a capability. And then finally, I think the piece that was probably the most valuable for me as a customer was it actually allowed us to then partner together from an IT function perspective and the business perspective. So on the IT side, we had a strategy that really revolved around market standards, leveraging the cloud, and so forth. The business had a strategy where they had to streamline their businesses. They needed to take a lot of efficiencies, get a lot of efficiencies in the process, do things with fewer people, and then create a set of insights for the management teams and the executive leaders. And so as a result, we were actually able to then partner, move at pace, using an agile approach, and then we were actually able to deliver on results very, very quickly. So that's a key part of the equation for how we moved forward. And then I guess finally, the thing I'd highlight for you, and this is a relatively recent piece that's actually relevant for this audience as well, is we also have a relationship with AWS. We're a part of the AWS Marketplace, and you can actually draw down on your AWS Marketplace subscriptions, if you will, and actually implement and leverage Anaplan as a solution in that marketplace itself. And there's additional pipelines, ingestion capabilities between AWS and Anaplan so that it makes it quite straightforward to move that data into the hub, then be able to do all of the complex calculations, modeling, forecasting, and things of that nature. And now you're actually able to rationalize a lot of these disparate sources, and you can actually leverage AWS or the hub to be able to do those things. So that's the executive summary on the relationship between Anaplan and AWS. We've highlighted how the platform can actually lend itself to solving for the relationship between IT and the business, especially around moving at pace and being able to get time to value much quicker than other solutions that are out there. And then finally, the ability to actually leverage the data and sharing it across boundary lines is also available. So I will park it there with you. Please swing by our booth. It is just down the aisle on the right over here. I'm happy to field additional questions around the platform, around how it's been used to really solve for this relationship between IT and the business, and how we've actually been able to generate a great deal of business value for our customers and actually for just across the board. So thank you very much, and I'll see you all outside. Thanks.